Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and with Outlaw Season almost here, Torchlight just released this cool video that actually came from Torchcon 2025. Yeah, they had a convention over in Shanghai. I actually was invited to go, but I couldn't get my passport in order fast enough. But they released one of the talks here, and this is actually really cool stuff because they are talking about the future plans and stuff like that. They did share some stats like how many characters and how many deaths and stuff like that. One of my favorite stats, though, was what was the #1 killer of players? And it was Arcana the Devil, which I think nobody's very surprised if you played that season. This thing just murderized people so much. But really why I wanted to make a video about this is because they really talked about their philosophy behind the game. And this is like one of the things I'm actually super excited about with Torchlight is I really do like their philosophy and how they go about making the game, with maybe some exceptions to the monetization, but in terms of the actual core game stuff. And I think this is really cool to kind of hear their thoughts and talk about this. And so one of the first things that they talked about was basically there's these 3 pillars of the game: combat, looting, and builds. And the first thing they talked about is how they're going to plan on improving combat. And he pretty much said that like there's this thing that they talk about, the one vision they're all aligned on: monsters surge at you like a tidal wave and you stand like an unbreakable boulder, crushing everything in your path, blasting corpses into the sky. And I just think that that's really cool. And so they're considering basically quadrupling monster density in maps just so you can get like more monster pop feeling. Now, how that's going to play with like the player surviving through that, it's going to be kind of difficult to know, but I definitely think that that's really cool. And I really do like the combat feel in Torchlight. It just feels like more like I'm moving around and things are exploding around me, just because my character's so cool, which is really great. Next thing I talked about is build diversity and kind of like build stuff. So they have like 10 gear component slots right now, but you only have like 12 different build components instead. So you're choosing like 10 out of 12. There's only like 66 possible combinations, but they're going to expand that to a lot more options, kind of like give you a lot more possible shenanigans basically with your builds, which I think is pretty cool. And they're going to be looking at like a lot of the meta builds and kind of like adjusting and trying to like see if everything's a good spot. They also talked about keeping things fresh and kind of showed off some of the heroes that we might have coming down the pike, with a whole bunch of different like ideas behind them. There's like one where there's a summoner that could like kill bosses and take them as a pet. Just like a whole bunch of like all these characters look really cool. And some of them are really big, like this big mecha guy. This like shadow guy over here is pretty cool. This like lizard dude with claws, I really like that guy as well. And it's just really kind of interesting to see kind of like what they're thinking about adding to the game, because they really have added a lot of classes. Every single season they add a new class, new play style, all this kind of stuff. And so it's really neat just to see like kind of what they have going. Now, other stuff they talked about is the looting and like getting loot and like all the different strategies. And they talked like specifically here about God of Might. God of Might, typically, like if you run God of Might, you go to this pillar, it pops a big circle, does fire on the ground, and it slowly kills you and you kill monsters. And it's always the same thing. And what they talked about is like keeping it fresh. And so they're going to potentially add versions of mechanics like God of Might. They're going to have like different elements to them or different like mini mechanics within the mechanic. One of the things they mentioned was like there would be a thunderstorm that would follow you around inside of the circle. And if you avoid it, you get more loot, which I think is pretty cool. There's like an ice version, probably a erosion version as well. And it's just pretty cool to see that they're like thinking about spicing everything up, especially these like older mechanics like God of Might, which definitely feels a little bit like aged compared to some of the newer stuff, because it's like basically from the first wave of content. And then they talked about the Traveler and how the Traveler is kind of old compared to all of the other bosses in the game. And they're going to be redoing the Traveler, probably redoing a lot of the bosses that are like the older bosses. We pretty much like got all of the like placeholder bosses out of the way now in the Netherrealm. And so they are going to be like adding more bosses here. They show off a few here with the like, you know, you can't actually see any details, but it's kind of interesting to think that they're working on all this kind of stuff and just continuing to improve the end game. Now, moving into the next part, I wasn't necessarily super excited for 100% of what we see here, but some of the stuff is actually really stinking cool. So character models getting a big update. I'm not sure if this is going to be all classes, but it definitely looks like they're going to be touching up. So this is like Karina 1, who to me looks like, I don't know, kind of really like very Torchlighty, but very like cartoony, and kind of replacing him with a more like modern looking type of character while still keeping the vibe, and like going and updating a lot of the spell effects here just to kind of like make it look better, and also like doing better stuff with the lighting, just kind of like doing more dynamic lighting with the attacks and stuff, like as your mortar is flying around or something, or different ground effects. Now, the one thing that I wasn't really hyped is this right here, where we have Rayhan like walking through this like dark kind of area, and this kind of looks like Path of Exile to me. And one of the things I really like about Torchlight is the simple fact that you are in kind of a brighter world than a lot of other ARPGs. And typically like an ARPG is like pretty dark, and Torchlight's just like this nice breath of fresh air. So I'm really hoping that they don't lean too hard into the darkness. They still keep a lot of that light. Now, the other thing that they talked about was updating the UI to making it feel a lot more modern, a lot less mobile. And a lot of this just looks really stinking cool. So this kind of looks like maybe the auction house or something, like what maybe your inventory or something will look like. And then most importantly, the passive trees. Now, one of the things I was a little bit annoyed about this season is that they went and updated all the passive trees, but they didn't update the appearance of them at all. They just looked basically the same as what we always had. And instead, you know, they are cooking this up instead. So we can see like the different like passive tree, like even they show an example of one here as well, showing some different stuff with slates, different stuff with our skills, and it's just really cool. Very excited to see this type of stuff. And even the animations here look really great, really crisp. And I'm just super excited for this game to get like a UI touch up, because I really feel like that is one of the sticking points for a lot of people, is how mobily the game feels. So hopefully this is something that massively improves it. Now the slates I think do look maybe a little bit wonky here. I'm not necessarily sure if I like this all that much. Maybe it's a little bit easier to read. It is a little bit dark on this particular video, but yeah, it's just very exciting to see what they're doing and see what they're cooking up. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Is this good changes? Are you excited about the UI rework of the character frame model and stuff like that? And yeah, we're gonna be streaming the Outlaw season here pretty soon, about like a little bit less than 16 hours. So come on, hang out with me, and we're going to be playing Rosa 2. And keep an eye on heroic.gg, because we are working on some guides over there as well. We'll see you guys again soon. Check you later.